There's so many people that are dealing with financial pressures and stress every single day. And I don't want to dismiss that as being, that's heavy. It's hard. I've been there, but I have it on my whiteboard for a reason, because the money management can get me so down in the dumps with this journey. And when I really think about, what are the real problems? And if money can fix it, it's not a real problem. That's probably my guiding light as it relates to, the brand building.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. This is a woman on a mission. Lori Taylor is truly a woman after my own heart. Not only being a mom with a rising senior, so we're going into this school year with some anxiety, but also somebody who's hugely passionate about making sure that we are eating healthy and that our kids are learning how to eat better, whether it's championing programs, championing how we feed our kids. So Lori, you started off with a blog, right?
Yeah. I sure did. Yes. Thank you for having me on the on the Your Brand Amplified podcast. I really appreciate it. And yes, this all started in 2012 as a blog that was published on a free WordPress template. And we've been chugging along ever since. The biggest transformation occurred in 2015 when I purchased my work for hire, which was the blog, and became the founder and was an owner of the Produce Moms. So it all started in 2012, though.
Amazing. So tell us about that journey. Was this something you were always interested in? Was this work you were already doing in different ways?
Yeah, I was working at Indianapolis Fruit Company. So I was selling fruits and vegetables to over 300 grocery retailers in a pretty broad corridor from as far north as Minnesota all the way south to Florida. So about 17 states in that central U.S. corridor that our delivery footprint touched. And all sizes and formats. And my job was to help all of these grocery retailers stock their produce department. So was working right in the middle of the supply chain of how our food moves in this country. So all of our vendors were the farmers and all of our customers were the retailers or food service operators like schools and restaurants and, other entities. So I was really specialized though with the retail sector, and I learned so much at the sales desk, and I'm really thankful for my 10 years at Indianapolis Fruit Company. And it was actually there as part of my work for hire that I pitched the idea of starting a blog in 2012. And we grew the blog together as a brand property of Indianapolis Fruit Company. It became my primary responsibility, so it started as my idea. And then it was my work for hire where I was in charge of authoring the blog and doing any of the related media appearances. And then in 2015, my former employer ultimately was done with all consumer marketing, and they gave me a legal document, and I had two choices. I could either go back to my job that was focused on sales, and together we would sunset the Produce Moms, and there was, prepared messaging within the legal document of what that would entail. And then path B was you can buy it. You can buy the whole shebang, the website, the IP, and you can become the owner of it and continue it on its growth trajectory. So that was the year I took my leap, 2015. And I paid more for my idea than the home that my family and I were living in.
Gosh.
That's my wild entrepreneurial, pathway. And I'm still looking for someone. 10 years later, we're celebrating 10 years of business ownership this August. So yeah, a decade under my belt as a bootstrapping small business owner. And I'm still looking for someone that became a business owner and entrepreneur by buying their work for hire. So if that's you, reach out. I'm looking for someone that shares this crazy. But, Anika, it's been a great, worthy journey. I mean, I'm really proud of the work we do. And the great thing about the Produce Moms is the mission and the purpose what we have today is the same as when I published on that very first blog. And our mission is to get more fruits and vegetables on every table. And we really believe that by educating folks on how to select, store, and serve their fruits and vegetables, we can drive consumption and change habits in the households here in the United States as it relates to produce consumption and living a better life.
Yeah. I think those are so important. The mission that you're on is so important. I will share, I was not that person. I did take my IP into a company that I worked for, and they rebranded it as theirs. And then when I was exiting, they said, okay, you can pay us this much money to exit with your property, or, we can work some kind of other deal. And I said, no. So, luckily my podcast and my registered trademark always stayed with me. That was never part of that company, but I did the opposite, right? But I've all moved on to better things that fit me better. They're happy to use. I mean, I even was like, you can use my name, image, likeness with my product that you're keeping. I don't care. I just need to walk away from this situation because it's not the fit for where I'm at right now and what I need in life. So kudos to you for taking that leap. I am sure that was an exciting and terrifying time for you to have to sit down, make these decisions with your family, and
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the family because they're the risk takers right alongside of you. My children bunked up in one bedroom together, gave mom that other bedroom for my home office. My husband, of course, was right alongside of me sharing that risk and, what now has turned into a reward. But man, those early days especially are full of risk. The risk is eternal. Like every day there's a risk that you're going to face and challenges that you overcome. But gosh, the early days, there's nothing like it.
So what was that like? Did you have a strategic plan in place before you paid the money and you owned the property? Because I'm sure you had to figure out really quickly, how do I monetize? How to make sure that we're keeping the audience, growing it?
Right. Yeah. So it's wild because, people ask me all the time, what was your strategic plan? What was your strategy? Like, how did you, and I'll be honest, like my plan was stay in business, like don't go bankrupt. For 3 years, like I said, this brand got a very solid foundation through the support of Indianapolis Fruit Company where it was able to grow as one of their brand properties. My sales quota for content marketing and brand ambassadorship and other influence that we were able to monetize with the Produce Moms, my monthly quota eventually grew to $25,000 a month. And so I had a pretty, for 2012, that was high, especially when you considered the audience that we had. Our audience was not even national at the time. We had a regional audience. Yes. So wild. But, the benefit of it being a brand property of a big distributor in the supply chain of fresh produce, we were investing in the Produce Moms was also from the vendor's point of view, investing in the Produce Moms was investing in one of your key accounts. Indianapolis Fruit was moving hundreds of millions of dollars of food across this nation every business quarter. So that was something that when I took that leap and when my bosses, when we came to a terms of agreement, one of the things I negotiated, and it really wasn't necessarily a negotiation, it was just kind of like something that it was almost more like word vomit. I said, I need to be in the room when you call. At the time, it was one of our primary customers. I said, I want it to be on speakerphone and I want to listen to the customer's reaction when you tell them you're selling the Produce Moms to me. And so the executive vice president agreed to that. And I went into his office and he dialed up one of our customers at Indie Fruit who was heavily invested in the Produce Moms and said to him, hey, we're getting ready to sell Lori, the Produce Moms. She's going to be it's going to be a sole property, standalone business entity that she is the sole owner of. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that. And the customer said, I think that's a great idea. Like, I think it actually will be stronger for Indie Fruit and the Produce Moms to uncouple and let each of the entities grow independently of one another. And so that was like such a springboard for me because I had 6 figures of acquisition debt and I only had one scope of work that I had buttoned up. And it was for $4,999 with USA pairs. And so like you're going out of business real quick if that's the only customer you have, so getting that verbal reassurance and that immediate authentic feedback, being able to hear that. I mean, I was brought to tears in my boss's office because it gave me the courage I needed. And really, I already had the courage, but it just gave me that validation that I'm not alone with thinking that this can sustain and grow on its own. Because I heard everything that you could imagine in terms of public feedback or peer feedback, people telling me like, oh my gosh, you should just start over. Like everyone has blogs, everyone's starting blogs. It was 2015 at the time I was going through the acquisition. Why not just start over? You know how to build one, like just start over with a new name and a new, it can be similar. But anyone who has built a catalog online of content or a social media following knows how very hard it is to start at the bottom and achieve what we built in that 3-year time frame. And now, the traffic we have to the website is like the traffic that we had at the time of acquisition, the annual traffic, we get that like every 72 hours now at theproducemoms.com. So that's another, and we have a national footprint. We have a highly engaged audience where we've diversified onto multiple platforms, all the different social channels. So there's just a lot more that we've been able to build upon. But I really think that my belief and my priority of maintaining that strong foundation was absolutely paramount in our ability to do what we do today. And I'll tell you another thing too, and I think this applies to anyone that's considering brand building or entrepreneurship. I really had to silence all the noise when I was making that decision. I had to just stay focused on my race. And I embraced the mindset that I am so proud that my idea sold for this kind of money. And that was really unique, Anika, because, my idea did sell for a lot of money, but it was selling back to me. But I really was. I was proud of that. I was like, I can lean into that pride. I can lean into knowing like you're capable, Lori, of having big, valuable ideas.
And then having, the authenticity because it came from you in the first place, the tenacity to continue, right? Because a lot of people could give up really easily. And the fact that you didn't and that you've grown it, now you have a branded fruit and vegetables. You have a podcast. You have other platforms.
Yeah. And a team, this all started where it was just like me wearing every hat. And now I've been able to bring in subject matter experts for all the different platforms where, and all the different touch points that the brand has. We have a graphic designer, we have a videographer, we have multiple photographers, we have someone who specializes just on LinkedIn, copywriters, the whole shebang. And so that was also like a real matrix for me to be like, wow, we're growing, was when it wasn't just me doing all the work solo. So that's been great. But, I think that you mentioned authenticity, and let's talk about that because a podcast about branding, I really think as I look back on my journey and just the way that these direct to consumer brands and blog, like community centric brands have all evolved. I've said this multiple times. There's like a timeline of how branding has evolved within my story, but I think it's indicative of like the branding evolution at large. So in 2015, when I bought the Produce Moms, from like about 2015 to about 2018, community was brand. That was the new brand. It was community centric. And then about 2018, 2019 until about, I don't know, maybe 2023, pretty recently, it was like activism was a big part of the brand. Like, what do you truly stand for? And what are you doing to drive change behind those values? And then 2023, 2024 to, where we are today, it's authenticity. And I think they're all interrelated. You can't really have one without the other necessarily. But to me, when I look back on my branding evolution, those are 3 big key characteristics that stand out: community, activism, authenticity. And if you are not authentic today as a brand, you are out of business.
Exactly. I love hearing you say this from the brand perspective, because when I talk to other marketers, we don't necessarily distill it that way. But when I talk to my students at USC, we do talk about this. but I don't think anybody's distilled it in this way specifically in 600 odd episodes of this podcast.
Well, good. I hope it
So
resonates with your audience and with your students.
100%, 100%. And I agree, you need all three of those things, but you need a community that believes in you because you're being authentic and true to your values. That could mean whatever you did during the pandemic to talk about how you're standing up for women's rights, human rights, right?
Well, in our corner of the world, during the pandemic, we were really leaning into helping people understand how to cook at home, helping people understand food safety protocol. Everyone was hypersensitive to all things, not just health and wellness, but is this safe? That was like
Do we have to
one of our
wash
first
everything before you
thoughts.
even bring it in our house? Like,
That's right. Like, do I need to bleach my food? Those were literally questions we were getting. Is fresh produce safe to eat if it's not being sold in a package? And during COVID, like for that entire 2020 to about 2022, we established like navigation on our homepage that was just COVID-19 resources, like so many other brands and businesses did. And within that portfolio of resources, it was very heavy on the food safety, proper preparation tips, how to select, store, and serve food, how to do online grocery orders. Like a lot of people had not, procured food for their personal use through online or curbside pickups prior to the pandemic. So those were all things that we bundled into this resource. And another thing we did, we really leaned into at-home education and activities for children, because our entire workforce here at the Produce Moms is moms, and that's not a requirement to work here. It's just how it happened, but we personally really felt the shock of like, oh, wow, like not only do I have a work from home job, but I also now am an at-home educator for a fourth grader or a sixth grader or a high schooler. Like we had the full gamut within our team. And so we created various resources. One that still is very much alive today and I think is so much fun. It's called Eat Like an Animal. And it takes all of the different zoo animals that children love. And it talks about their diets in the wild as well as at the zoos. Most animals are very heavy plant eaters. And so it's a great way to inspire children to get excited about fruits and vegetables. The very first meal that we published was Eat Like a Brown Bear. And it was fresh salmon with like a blackberry compote and a few other components on the plate that were fruit and vegetable heavy. And we got so much immediate feedback from folks. Like they loved the storytelling about the this is what bears eat, and and the kids enjoyed it. And we layered in a lot of education with the animals both in the wild as well as in captivity. And we worked with some of the zoo systems to make sure that we were putting forward content that was accurate, talking about like, I'm not a zoologist, but I do know that from my days at the sales desk, if we had a load of produce that we couldn't sell, we could usually sell it to the Indianapolis Zoo and they'd feed it to the animals, stuff like that. So I'm constantly able to connect the dots back to that foundation that I was speaking of. The foundation really has driven all that we do.
I have two little nephews who are born pandemic and after.
Yeah.
But who I'm going to send because I have your website pulled up too on another screen, but I'm going to send it to my brother and
I think they'll enjoy it.
Yes. 100%. I mean, just thinking about how many more foods a child will try if they get to eat like their favorite animal.
Yes. And that's really what it's rooted in. If we want children to eat more fruits and vegetables in volume and variety, we have to find ways to inspire them, because they are constantly getting inspired by the ultra processed food industry. If we're talking about marketing and brand building, some of the most iconic brands in the world are food and beverage brands that are so far from best for you category choices, but they are brands that are truly iconic and they are hitting on every cylinder of effective branding. And, our children in this nation and around the world are paying attention to that. So when it comes to fruits and vegetables, we don't have the budgets. And we're more of a commodity, so we battle that too when it comes to how we're connecting with the end consumer. But what we have is culture, and what we have is a unifying force, something that, through time, even again at the sales desk days, I was learning like, hey, this like North Shore Chicago grocery store that Oprah Winfrey's chef shops at is buying the same food that this grocer that over 60% of their annual revenue comes from SNAP benefits, so food is a unifying force. It's one of the few things that brings people of all different cultures and beliefs around the table. It's the way we all celebrate and enjoy life is around food. So it's got a really unique unifying force when we think about humanity. And then during the pandemic, when we created this resource with the animals, I'm like, my gosh, it even connects us to the animal kingdom, so
Well,
it's really special. Fruits and vegetables are very special. And I truly believe that it's in my soul. And I think that spirit and that positivity comes alive when you visit our website or engage with our brand.
Mm-hmm. What I find really interesting is that we both have rising seniors, as we mentioned before, and that time frame, blogs were huge and getting bigger, mommy bloggers and, obviously yours, fashion, all of the different things. But then also there were the books coming out with how to hide sneaky, right? Sneaky chef. How do you hide fruits and vegetables in food that you're making so that your kids are getting fruits and vegetables without them knowing? That might work for, like, my daughter does not have a sweet tooth. She won't eat candy, but that also means she doesn't like to eat fruit to this day. And so, she'll try things again. Everyone but I did have to use that book a lot because I was like, how is she missing this entire taste bud? Even though we try to serve her the actual fruit. And then, I did move to that. But I love the fact that you're standing up for fruit and vegetables and saying, we don't have to hide it. We don't have to be sneaky.
No,
Here
we can celebrate
it.
Yeah, we can celebrate them. And we have a lot of, like, one of my favorite blogs on our whole website, if you like this, you should try this. We are able to lean into our subject matter expertise to help people really broaden their experience and enrich their life with fruits and vegetables. But, there's endless opportunities as it relates to fresh produce. And another thing that I think is really important for anyone who's listening, don't beat yourself up about it. Fruits and vegetables, that is the ultimate choice in food. So it's the produce department, total guilt-free zone for you, as it relates to the grocery shopping experience. Like, every dollar you spend in the produce department is a dollar well spent. And I really believe that we live in a country where food choice is so abundant, and that's a blessing. But we are not here at the Produce Moms. We are not here to beat you up for the choice that works for your family. Our only platform and mission is we want to see more fruits and vegetables on every table. We don't care where they're farmed, how they're farmed, where they're purchased. We just want to make sure that, that we're helping you get as much on your table as possible.
Yeah. I want to ask about your audience. So as it started growing, do you find that it's mostly parents? Is it mostly moms? Is it nutritionists looking for new ideas?
Yeah, great question. And yes, for those who have responded to our surveys and, for the data that you can get from Google, we have over 80% of the people following the producemoms.com and subscribe to our newsletters they have children in the home. And then the age demographics are kind of, what you would expect for that type of an audience member. We have the vast majority of our audience is between the age of 30 and 45. Yeah. So, yeah, but we are constantly examining consumer trends and identifying, okay, how can we be a stronger resource for people who are not parents? So with that in mind, we started the pet food content. That's been some of the best content we've ever created. None of the brands that we work with are necessarily growing or investing in these, premium varieties of fruits and vegetables. None of them are necessarily growing them thinking this is going to one day become dog food, but they are, the sale is the sale when it comes to the business of food. And people are very passionate about their pets. And I think that has allowed us to really capitalize on growing an audience of singles and older demographic, younger demographic. We also started, beauty and skincare has really risen in trends and popularity over the last like 3 years. And especially with, the youngest demographic in our consumer society, like the preteens, especially
Mhm.
preteen females. Ulta, Sephora, places like that. I mean, there's an abundant amount of great branding and marketing and advertising stories out there about how this generation is driving a whole new frontier of beauty industry marketing and branding. So we were like, people can use fruits and vegetables to make DIY cosmetics and skincare and hair care and all of that. So that's another content silo that we've invested in more recently to help curate and bring in new audience to our brand. We really believe that anything that's happening in society, any interests that consumers have, fruits and vegetables have a seat at that table.
Yeah, I do love the fact that you're finding these other use cases, these other audiences, and that market, like you said. I mean, even my, you know, graduate students talk about beauty and beauty products
It's
and which
huge for the
brands.
college students. Yes, huge, huge for like the 20 somethings. And I really think that's probably the primary consumer of that content. But we also get a lot of like moms who have children that are that preteen age. And they just appreciate that, like, oh my gosh, here's a recipe for a papaya skin oil. Where if I walk into a beauty store to buy a little 1 ounce vial of a skin oil that probably has papaya in it, that's going to cost me around $50. And I can buy a huge Meridol papaya at the grocery store for about $3. So it's been a lot of fun learning how to use fruits and vegetables in that application and then sharing that knowledge with our
And
audience.
oh yeah, and I'm sure that would go over really, really well with TikTok trends and tutorials.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun. And another thing I love, you and I are connecting in August. I'm not sure exactly when this show's going to publish, but right now internally at the Produce Moms, it is all about holiday content. We're heavy right now putting together all of our holiday content, and it's probably my favorite time of year at the business is right now because we are really thinking about how we're going to help our audience celebrate all of the winter holidays. And something that we started over the last couple years is helping people understand like the affordability with DIY gifting, how to just put together beautiful decor during the holiday season using fruits and vegetables, whether it's tablescapes or tree garlands. I mean, all sorts of different ideas. And that it really is some of my personal favorite content to put together. And I feel like it's just, I'm not really a crafty person, but this made me more of a crafty person.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about how you move from blog to all of your brand extensions to becoming a national branded fruit and vegetable company as well. And then to deciding to launch a podcast.
Yeah, thank you. So our primary stakeholders, we have two. And I think this is an exercise that anyone who's building a brand, they really need to identify like, why are we here? Who are we here for? And so we have our mission. It's very defined. We've been working towards that mission for the last decade. We're driving more produce onto your table. We want to get more fruits and vegetables on every table. Who are the stakeholders in that journey and in that mission? And for us at the Produce Moms, the primary stakeholder is the farmer as well as the household cook. And so everything we do, we have to make sure that we are serving those two audiences at the same level. We don't want to pit one against the other. We don't, and there's times where like something we do is much more relevant for the consumer than it is necessarily, the farmer. But we make our money from the farmer. Those are our customers. That's our sustainability, are the farms that are investing in the Produce Moms for everything from content marketing to advocacy to branding solutions and more. And so I have to keep our customer base happy, but the household, the end consumer, that's also a critical customer of ours. If we are serving up the content for them to essentially consume and enjoy. And without that engaged audience, the whole operation's out of business. So, the customer is always right. Well, for us, we kind of operate with that dual customer mindset, both the farmer and the end consumer or the household cook. And so when I think about how the brand has grown or the offerings that we're doing, I have to make sure that they're extremely, extremely relevant and drive value to those two audiences, ideally at the same time. Every move we make has to be something that is checking a box for each of those two stakeholders. And then also keeping the produce moms in business. Is it something we can monetize? Is it something that is going to help me knock down doors for lead gen or other, is it a savvy business move? That is critical, So thinking of it with that triangular perspective, my business sustainability and our two stakeholders, I knew that, I was a consultant for Nickelodeon. And I got that job because the Dietary Guidelines for Americans and it was a 2019 update, could have been before that, probably was before that. They changed, they added in a responsibility clause that they've really never had. Like if you are in a position where you're promoting food, you have a responsibility to make sure that you are promoting the best for you category foods. And that's not a direct quote. That's, but Nickelodeon brought me in because their portfolio of licensed branded products at grocery retail was so far from best for you category foods. It was a lot of, fruit snacks, not whole fruit, and so that was really when my eyes were opened and when I learned so much about branding and the two market strategy and the way that the grocers pretty much expect that their vendors are engaging in shopper marketing through their own efforts, as well as now every grocer is commercializing their own shopper marketing offerings. But that was when I decided to pitch the idea after we wrapped up the programming with Nickelodeon and I was no longer in a contracted conflict of interest scenario. I said to the farmers we work with, I was like, hey, we can do this for you with the produce moms. Would you be interested? And 2019 was when we launched our very first product in market. It was Crunch Pack sliced apples that had the produce moms branding on it. It was a co-branded effort. And now today, we've stuck at it. And now today, about half of America's Walmarts, their Idaho potatoes are produce moms branded. So we secured that deal by working with Wada Farms, a long-standing farming partner of ours here at the Produce Moms customer. They've invested to work with us for content marketing for, probably about 9 years now. They've been working with the Produce Moms, as well as with Idaho Potatoes, because that's a branded property of its own. So the Idaho Potato Commission, Wada Farms, Produce Moms, we were able to put together what's called the Produce Moms Easy Baker Potato. You've probably seen them. They're like triple washed. They're wrapped. They're in a microwave ready wrap where you can just put them right into the microwave. And within 7 minutes, you have like a steakhouse quality baked potato. Or they're washed and ready to cook if you just want to remove the wrap and cook it however you want, air fryer, oven, whatever. And so that Wada Farms wins because by working with my brand on package, they have a unique offering for their customer, Walmart. Right. And Walmart, and they're able to say to Walmart, hey, we don't just have, a commodity potato for you. We have a potato with a brand on it, right, with a QR code that has an educational suite for your shoppers that's backed up by dynamic digital offerings and a landing page that has cooking demos, a robust, consumer-facing audience and social media channels behind it. So that stakeholder wins. The cook, they win too, because they're what used to just be a potato now has engaging content. They're learning more. We get just from that QR code, Anika, we probably get 15,000 visitors to our website a month just from that QR code scan.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that tells us that people care. They want to see the videos about how this food is farmed. They want to be inspired on the different ways they could cook this potato. They want to learn more about the Produce Moms as a brand. It's a catchy brand name. Even if you've never heard of it, you're like, maybe I'm interested in it, So that those are all reasons why it's a win for both stakeholders.
Yeah. I can see how putting together a partnership like that is so robust and not always easy to do. So kudos for that. And then for getting it in such a large organization.
Yeah, thanks. Walmart's been really supportive of the produce moms. We actually last year about this time, we launched an e-commerce offering with them. And that was huge for my brand growth, to be able to have the produce moms appear on Walmart's e-commerce, driving folks to seasonal produce and having a produce moms approved catalog within Walmart's shopping app. That was a big, big milestone for the produce moms as a brand.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
And then the podcast.
The podcast has been a lot of fun, but I'll tell you what, this. Anyone who's hosting a podcast knows this, not necessarily people listening to podcasts. Starting a podcast is easy. Keeping a podcast going is a grind. It is a total commitment. We do a weekly show. We've been podcasting weekly since 2018. It's a guest format similar to yours. And it has allowed us, what the podcast was inspired by the FAQs that we were receiving.
Nice.
And really, a lot of the FAQs as it relates to fruits and vegetables are highly technical questions. People want to know more about things like crop protection and heavy metals in soil. And then there might be some stuff that's not quite as scientific or heavy. Like it could be stuff like, when is my produce in season? Or like, what is the story behind this farm? Like, how do I know that my money's going towards good things? And so the podcast is the perfect medium for that storytelling. It can be highly educational. Like when we get someone who is a soil health expert on the show that can really talk about topics such as regenerative agriculture or like heavy metals in soil, pesticide residues, all of those things. I mean, that is the reality of farming. Anyone who has done a backyard tomato plant knows that pests are a real thing, so we have to, at the commercial scale, the farmers, crop protection is a huge part of the operation, but none of these farmers want to spray excessively. Their quote unquote factory floor is the earth, so they're trying to protect it and yield the best return possible year over year. They can't do that by abusing the soil or sabotaging the plants with excessive sprays. And so it allowed us to really talk about, the podcast started as a medium where we could talk about those types of topics, more in depth. And now it's, I think in a way too, it's kind of like its own unique audience. Like maybe necessarily our podcast subscribers may or may not be coming to our website, and that's fine. We're happy to have them. And it's also been really good for me. I've learned so much hosting that show. And another thing I love is the fact that we can give all the brilliant people that are working hard every day to get more fruits and vegetables on your table, we can give them a spotlight to tell their story. And I love that. That's probably one of my favorite things about the podcast is, the fact that it's a platform where people who wouldn't necessarily get the mic can come on and tell their story and get their moment of fame, so to say, in recognition for what they do.
Definitely. That's one of my favorite things as well, is highlighting brands and people such as yourself, being able to hear your story, your journey, what you did that was successful, the hard parts, and celebrate you, right? And celebrate produce moms. And I'm thinking about, Lori, there's probably so many more brand extensions that you could have, or that you might be in the works, books, children's books, maybe an animated cartoon for children using the zoo animals and things. So are you working on additional brand extensions or that you can tell us, or if you can't tell us?
All of these things, yeah, of course. I mean, it's not a secret society. IP is a real thing though, folks. Like, don't feel like you have to advertise all of your dreams and what you're working on. But here, what I'm really exploring, I want to certainly make sure that as our nation embraces this, food as medicine movement or MAHA or whatever you want to call it, there is a heightened interest in America for everyday wellness as a means to prevent illness. And so there's a huge opportunity for a brand like the Produce Moms that has for a decade met people where they're at and helped people understand like, hey, the vast majority of us aren't eating the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables, but we're here to help you make that journey as simple as possible. So that's something that I'm involved with. Like, I literally was just sharing with you that I was in DC this week, making sure that as these MAHA reports come out, that they're hearing from me and knowing like, hey, the promotion of fresh produce is critical. And a strategy that we really need to think about is like, let's quit serving children apples that have had a birthday in the school meal program. Let's make sure that these farmers who are investing in the most flavor forward varieties, let's make sure that school meals are properly funded so that we can get the highest flavor profile apples on the school lunch tray. Those are the kind of things I was working on in DC. And so I think that's important, and that also comes back to those, community activism, authenticity. That's a key part of what this brand is the work that we do to drive fruits and vegetables in federal nutrition programs, such as school meals, WIC, SNAP, etc. So that's a huge part of what we're doing. And that's a constantly evolving landscape. Now, in terms of brand extensions, I would say I'm obviously with the heightened interest on our website for content that is skin care, DIY beauty type. That's something I'm really looking into. Like, is there an opportunity for a Produce Mom skincare product line that uses like upcycled fruits and vegetables as a base component of these ingredients? So that's something I'm currently working on. There's a company out of Detroit that does a lot of this stuff. I'm based in Indianapolis, so it's nice to have someone in the Midwest that's like driving distance, for these kind of explorations. And then other than that, I don't really think that there's anything that's hot on the to-do list. Books have been something that people have been telling me to do for a long time. Like, write your own like memoir style book, like tell your entrepreneurial story as well as the children's books. And I think that I'll probably do that maybe after I get at least my first son off to college, but maybe my second, maybe both of them, because my younger son is he just started his sophomore year of high school. And I'm trying to help my boys reach their goals too, and I think that that's important. It's okay to say like, all of us only have 100%. And when you're running a small business and a brand that is bootstrapping like the Produce Moms, I want to go all in with everything. But the best thing for me to do is move at the speed of cash so that this business stays in business. And I can't personally burn out because I am, the little engine that could with this whole operation. So I have to just crawl, walk, run, and be comfortable with that. Again, kind of run your own race. And I love the Eat Like an Animal series. I brought it up today on the show. I think it's incredibly just heartwarming content that really serves our mission, but it also serves the children audience that is near and dear to our hearts at the Produce Moms. And I wouldn't be surprised if within the forthcoming years, you see something like a, children's book series, like if a bear comes over for dinner, like what are we serving them? Stuff like that. So I don't know. I'll move at the speed of cash though. I do know that. And I'm not quitting anytime soon. So stay tuned. And I'm also an open book. Like, if you have an idea, if you have content you would like the Produce Moms to produce to support your household, just reach out. Let us know.
Amazing. Yeah. And we will have your website, producemoms.com, in the show notes. Lori, this has been such a wonderful conversation. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next, bringing you on once you have some of these other projects out. And I did want to ask, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, poem, verse, family motto?
I do. It's on my whiteboard, which you can't see, but it's right here. And it's from my late father. He passed away in 2018. He was a huge part of my life. I was blessed with a wonderful dad, and he died suddenly and unexpectedly from a heart attack. And something he told my siblings and I our entire lives was, if money can fix it, it's not a real problem. And I never really felt that until the day he died. And I was like, you know what? Dad was right. Money can't bring dad back. This is the first real problem that I've had in my life. And when you are a bootstrapping entrepreneur, the money stress can be insurmountable. Like that cash flow management is so hard, and like I'm still paying down my EIDL loan from COVID. It can really be crippling, and money stress is everywhere. I mean, it's cited as one of the leading reasons for divorce in this country. And, there's so many people that are dealing with financial pressures and stress every single day. And I don't want to dismiss that as being, that's heavy. It's hard. I've been there, but I have it on my whiteboard for a reason, because the money management can get me so down in the dumps with this journey. And when I really think about, what are the real problems? And if money can fix it, it's not a real problem. That's probably my guiding light as it relates to, the brand building. Yeah.
Such a great quote.
Yeah. Thank you.
And something I do think that we often forget about when we're thinking about, oh my gosh, this bill just came in, or I need to put money into this as an investment in my business. It can get real easy to get bogged down really quickly and then not stay focused on our mission.
Yeah. So. And, money's kind of like your audience. It's never going to be enough. It's always going to, it's a forever journey. It comes and it goes, it ebbs and flows. But yes, I mean, I'm not going to underscore the fact that it's important. Obviously, I'm a bootstrapping entrepreneur of a for-profit business. So, but it is that having that quote on my whiteboard where I'm also tracking my cash flow and like my tax payments and all that stuff, it helps me keep it real here in the office and keeps myself grounded with that, how I'm divvying up that 100% too. It's like, do I really need to give my entire day to this business, or can I really shut it down at 5 p.m. and make dinner for my family and enjoy the people I love the most?
Exactly. Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to keeping up with your journey. And thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it on your favorite platform.
Thank you.
I'm excited to bring more stories to you of amazing entrepreneurs sharing their brands, their journeys, the things that made them successful, the things that they're still working on, and the things that you can incorporate into your day-to-day. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.